Welcome to What is Going for new thought from the edge of Each week on OMTimes flagship radio show, veteran broadcaster, author, and media consultant Sandie Sedgbeer conducts thought-provoking interviews with inspirational authors, artists, musicians, scientists, speakers, and filmmakers who are working at the point where spirituality and science meet consciousness at the very edge of Here is your host, Sandie Sedgbeer.
Hello. As we come to the end of a truly extraordinary year in the history of humanity, we're going to shine a new light today on the primary issue that has dominated our headlines for the past 12 months. One that views the coronavirus situation as a healing crisis that marks the beginning of a new epoch of human development, characterized by operating beyond the ego. Vander Clute is a veteran entrepreneur, writer, mentor, and a consciousness coach who's committed to co-creating a society filled with spiritually awake people and thriving communities. A member of the Evolutionary Leaders Circle and a co-creator of the Consciousness of Money, Vander Clute is passionate about empowering people to find their way during these times of challenge, disruption, and unprecedented opportunity. Vander Clute, welcome.
Sandie, it's lovely to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Good to have you, Jeff. Now, over the last 5 years, you've been sourcing and cultivating transmissions of energy and consciousness that engage the processes of spiritual awakening. And for pretty much the entirety of this year, the thoughts of virtually every citizen of the world have been firmly focused on the SARS-CoV-2 pandemic. Earlier this year, you connected with this novel life form and asked it to tell you about itself. And what came through was a number of gifts, followed by a message for humanity, which has been shared extensively and was published in an anthology called The Corona's Transmissions, Alternatives for Engaging with COVID-19, from the physical to the metaphysical. What's been interesting is what's happened since then in your world, because that message and the ones that you have been sharing since really do offer us a completely new light to shine on this particular pandemic that has caused so much disruption and fear for so many people. Let's start by talking about something that came through you a few months ago when you wrote that humanity has chosen love and our collective consciousness shifted into a new pattern. Now, looking at the world, that seems pretty hard to believe, but, tell us about this.
Yes, well, it's something that I slept on many, many nights in order to make sure I was perceiving correctly. Earlier this year, I had a lot of time to reflect one of the gifts of the coronavirus, which has been difficult, I know, for many, but there are also silver linings. So for me, I had the opportunity to meditate much, much more than usual and to establish a new routine, a new pattern for myself. And I became aware that this was happening collectively. So I started to use my intuition to ask some questions, if you will, of spirit, and in particular to see whether we might gain some clarity around where we're heading and also the process that we're in so that we can be at peace with the changes, knowing that good things are coming, if in fact that's the case. And I'm happy to report that it really is. I think it was in April when I first asked about, whether there was a moment in time when we would be able to notice, at least subtly, that something had shifted fundamentally and there would be no going back from that point. And I intuitively got July 5th, 2020. And if you're in Australia, it would be July 6th in that case. But nevertheless, I meditated on that. And I also started to ask, well, what does the new pattern look like? And or what will it look like at that point? It hadn't yet happened. So fast forward a bit, and we approach July 5th, and I start to feel something stirring inside. You could say many voices, encouraging voices, and the encouragement was to choose love, that it would be a very opportune moment for many of us to consciously and deliberately choose love in the lead up to this moment of transition. So I wrote a post about that and offered a guided meditation, and many people took me up on the challenge, if you will, and reported having wonderful experiences and seeing powerful visions, and most importantly, feeling in their hearts that something had shifted. And I've had people write me who are in the military, who are in all kinds of different walks of life, who have reported very similar experiences. So this isn't only for one segment of the population. I feel that it's really for all of us. So on July 5th, I was again contemplating for many hours, and what came to me was to ask the question, well, to what extent have the major wars of the last century been resolved energetically? And I got that they were only resolved on paper, basically, but energetically and within the collective consciousness of humanity, the various wars, and going back to the Civil War in the United States and probably long before then, hadn't been fully completed. So I made a point of, yes, choosing love, and yes, offering myself as a vessel in some deep energetic way to allow those conflicts to kind of de-energize and lose their grip on the collective human psyche. And I got that happened. And may it be so. I look forward to a day when we're not repeating those patterns of the past. Then I could feel in myself something was in fact awakening. And I inquired, what are the qualities? Now, what are the qualities of this new pattern that's awakening? And the first thing that came to me was authenticity, that we are very much invited to know who we are, take the deep dive into our own nature, and discover also what it is that we're here to do. And in part, we'll know what that is because it's what we somehow inexplicably just love to do at a soul level. And then I saw that if we really collectively do our love to, if we show up as who we are and do that and offer ourselves and offer our gifts in a sacred way, in service, that not only is it a beautiful way to be in the world, not only is it deeply, incredibly healing, but actually it's going to work financially. It's going to weave these collective actions from the heart, from the soul, using our minds, of course, using all of ourselves, because wholeness is part of this. But these kinds of actions will collectively weave a new web of relationship, which is another of the gifts of the coronavirus, by the way. We're being invited to come into networks of mutual support and find new ways to make sure that we stay as well as possible and even thrive. So, yes, we're building new networks and new economies that will be based on exchanges of gratitude and essentially loving energy, even as we do the practical day-to-day things. And there are a number of other qualities of the new pattern. I'm sure you're going to like them. It's very much also about, I would say, being available to the timeless. So making a practice of listening deeply and receiving our new self on an ongoing basis and releasing our old self. So very much about healing and welcoming the unexpected and the unpredictable, because now in the new pattern, you could say life has our back, our collective back. And that's always been true, but if we've held life in some kind of suspicion or with some kind of suspicion, then life has this way of mirroring back to us what we project onto it. So now, as we step into our deeper, truer selves, release a lot of baggage, welcome the unexpected, trust life is going to prove over and over again that it is trustworthy. And I've lived this, and the people I work with, the people I play with, we've been in a big collective experiment. Is it true that if we trust life is going to show us that, in fact, it's worth our trust? And when we love life, life loves us back. When we support life, life supports us back. So this is really, this is, if we distill it down, this is the new pattern, this virtuous circle of loving life and life loving us, and allowing that to take all kinds of forms, including economic and financial and political and all the rest. And we will discover that it works, and it works a lot better than the old pattern based on suspicion and conflict.
You move in circles where we're very much like-minded people. You're part of the Transformational Leaders Circle. I know some of the people that you know. For those people out there who don't move in those kinds of circles, it is very difficult right now to muster trust. Many people are saying to me that we've been wrong-footed so much this year that we're now in a state of complete cognitive dissonance, and it is hard to trust anything. How can people begin to recover that? Because it's not as easy as saying trust. There's more to it than that when your trust has been, impacted in the way that it has this year.
That is true. Trust is perhaps the biggest lesson, or one of the, say, top 3 biggest lessons. That's what I get for humans to learn and master. And baby steps. Find opportunities to practice that are smaller in some sense. Nothing is bigger or smaller. We learn eventually. Everything is exquisitely important. Every step we take is so important. But let's start with what we can do on a day-to-day basis. I would say if there's fear that life isn't good or human nature isn't good, check out karunavirus.org, and I'll spell that Karuna virus.org. Of course, this is a play on coronavirus, but also Karuna is the Sanskrit word for compassion. So this website pulls together literally thousands of stories of people taking care of one another, finding solutions to the complex challenges of these times when we're so restricted in our abilities to move around and do things that we would normally do. And yet the human creativity that is flourishing now is astonishing. I also appreciate that if you've lost a loved one, then it's going to be that much more difficult to trust that life is benevolent. And I guess I would invite a more metaphysical exploration of the possibility that on deep, deep levels, we're all playing this incredibly important role where some of us come and some of us go, and there's learning and there's grief. And by the way, grief is a central part of this transition process. We have to let go of what has been and the energy of what has been. And it's just not easy. I can't say that grief is something that we just do and get over quickly, but it has its own wisdom. It has its own timeline. So what that then leads me to, if we can't just leap into trust right away, let's be present with life and let life move and witness what's happening, witness what it brings up in us, witness the grieving, witness the pain, the frustration, as well as all of the joys and surprises. And in the witnessing, there's something that changes in the circuitry of our minds individually and collectively. And it's as if life wants to be seen in all of its possibilities, what we would label as good and what we would label as bad. So if we're on the receiving end, shall we say, of an experience that's painful, we can perform an incredible service to life by witnessing what has happened and being with it and allowing it to bring up what it brings up in our soul and hearts and minds and everything. And then the storm will pass. The storm will always pass, and there will always be some kind of healing. And then, with the benefit of hindsight, we can see, yes, there was a deep lesson in that for me and for others. And maybe now I can share my story. I can share my story of loss. I can share my story of disconnection and isolation and perhaps the mental illness, because so many people are experiencing challenges, the psychological challenges right now. But when the storm of coronavirus has past, we will look back and say, my goodness, we have been collectively uplifted. It was the best of times and the worst of times, and it was devastating. And something changed for the better that could not have changed otherwise. So that's an expanded perspective. Maybe that kind of trust is going to take years to build. And yes, it will. That's been my experience. I didn't just say overnight, I'm going to trust, and now everything is roses. It probably has taken me about 10 years to cultivate this capacity. But as we cultivate the capacity to trust, we will be rewarded in little ways and then bigger ways, and then with essentially a new take on life altogether.
Well, everything you're saying is quite true. I see so much creativity pouring forth from people who never thought that they had, their lives were running on such a pattern that, they didn't have the opportunity or even the belief that they could be creative. And some miraculous things are happening. But at the same time, this is, this word unprecedented is so overused, it's almost becoming a cliche. But it is unprecedented, and people don't know what to do with all of the feelings and the emotions and the realizations that are coming up, because everything that they've built the foundation of their lives on and trusted to be secure has gone.
Yes. Well, it's undeniable as well as unprecedented that there is a huge, let's say, psychic pressure that we're all experiencing, where every belief is being challenged, every assumption, every structure of society is being stressed. And in a way, it's a birthing process. Now, I haven't given birth. You can tell from my voice I'm probably not in a position to do that. So I can only speak from a kind of intuitive knowing of the challenges of the process and what I've been told, and also what some dear friends like Barbara Marx Hubbard have written about as humanity is going through a birthing process, birthing a new human, really, and a new kind of society that is much more conscious, and the birth process is far from easy in almost all cases. So here we are. Maybe for some people, having a perspective that helps to make sense of these times allows us to relax. And if we can relax, if we can find any way at all to relax during these times, it will help so much. When the emotions are strong, find a way to relax. When the news on TV is extremely frustrating and the polarization is getting to us, let's find ways to relax. And if we can go exercise by walking in nature, because that's allowed in a lot of places that are under lockdown at the moment, go walk in nature, because we're not usually going to be able to work it out with our minds. This isn't something we can solve. But what we'll discover is when we can stay in a much more relaxed state, things tend to work out much faster and with less turmoil.
Mm. You're listening to What Is Going On. I'm Sandie Sedgbeer, and I'm speaking with veteran entrepreneur, writer, mentor and consciousness coach Jeff Vander Clute about the global upgrades that have been quietly happening while the attention of humanity has been focused on the pandemic. After the break, the keys are operating principles for living well and thriving in a new pattern.
The future of internet radio is here. OMTimes Radio, IOM FM.
Ascending Hearts is no ordinary dating site, but a spiritual dating site with a purpose, to link you with your soulmate. We engineer the serendipity so you can trust that you will attune with someone that has the same matching vibration as you. Ascending Hearts, the conscious dating site for the spiritually aware. Try Ascending Hearts for free. AscendingHearts.com.
Hello, I'm Sandie Sedgbeer, host of OMTimes' flagship radio show, What Is Going On. As a long-time editor, book judge, spiritual magazine publisher and radio host, I've read thousands of books and interviewed hundreds of authors and teachers, so I know what's worth reading and what isn't. Now, with the spiritual book market growing increasingly crowded, more and more people are seeking my help in finding the authentic voices, the empowering tools, and the genuine skip the BS guidance that will make the most difference to their spiritual development. So I decided to make it easier by bringing my knowledge, experience, and considerable network of contacts together in the No BS Spiritual Book Club. There are no ads, no joining fees, no obligations, and no BS. Just an ever-growing library compiled by recognizable and respected names of the 10 best books that help them the most on their journeys. Plus free book excerpts, audios, and live video interviews where you can quiz them about their spiritual journeys and their 10 best list choices. Your time and money are valuable, your spiritual journey even more so. If you're looking for genuine guidance from people who've walked this path before you, check out Sedgbeer.com. Click on the No BS Spiritual Book Club tab and join the club. That's Sedgbeer.com, SEDGBEER.com. I'll see you there.
Vox Novus, the new voice. Vox Novus, the new dimension. Vox Novus, thought and movement leaders who will share from their experience and offer tools to help us navigate our rapidly changing world. My name is Victor Furman. Join me every Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern on OMTimes Radio for Vox Novus, the new voice.
These are the sounds of a dinner that almost didn't happen. A dinner now served, thanks to people like you. Due to COVID-19, 17 million more Americans may face hunger. Feeding America is helping our neighbors in need. And if you're able, you can too. Donations are being accepted at feedingamerica.org/coronavirus. Brought to you by the Ad Council and Feeding America, 200 food banks strong.
Welcome back. Jeff Vander Clute, in July, when you embarked on your 3-month journey of meditation and recalibration, you were given a simple set of keys for thriving in the new pattern. You say that these keys are essentially the operating principles for humans to live well, both individually and as a collective, now and in the future. Tell us about those keys and what do we need to do in order to be able to utilize them?
Yes, well, so thriving in the new pattern. We're in a world that in some fundamental ways is very distinct from where we've been. There seems to be a new foundation, I would say, and new principles for the good life that I spoke to a bit earlier in terms of being authentic and offering what we love in service. And these are, in fact, 2 of the keys for thriving in the new pattern. And these keys have come to me through deep listening and also in my practice of working with many, many different people who are on spiritual journeys and who are committed to living fully and truly and certainly authentically. So 15 keys have come to me, and I know there could be more, but let's say this is a representative set. And I've recently reorganized them just a little bit so that they tell a story. And so this will be the first time that I'm actually sharing the story that the keys tell, in addition to being a kind of set of operating instructions. It just feels natural and right. So let me share again. A few of them you've heard. So we start by making ourselves available to the timeless, and this would be the stillness. So we can hear the still small voice within ourselves, and we can do this through meditation and relaxation, various practices of contemplation. So when we're available to the timeless, we're very receptive. We can welcome and receive our new selves, and also in this process, because it's a cycle of receiving and releasing, we're releasing our old selves, and it just happens naturally. We don't have to try to release the old selves unless we're holding on for dear life to our prior identities, which may often be the case. So there the relaxation is helpful again, so that we can let go and breathe And breathe in and breathe out. And also ground ourselves deeply. That's another key. And so this is becoming deeply centered and established. It's like having our roots deep down in the earth, and I would say even deeper into the true nature of our being. And then when we're open and we're relaxed and we're receiving and we're releasing and we're grounded, we can welcome, we're in a much better position to welcome the unexpected and the unpredictable, which turns out to be how life, the leading edge of life, actually shows up. It doesn't show up in the ways that we're used to seeing. That's not what's alive. What's alive is what's actually new. And so we can ultimately, like I was saying before, we can trust life. And if we're willing to make the leap of faith and trust life even before we have overwhelming evidence, we will be rewarded. The evidence tends to come after we take the leap of faith. So trusting life, like just saying, yes, I'm going to give this a try, is one of the most essential keys. And then, as we're trusting and we're grounded and we're open, it's easier to be loving. And here, the key is to love everyone, which might sound like a tall order. This doesn't mean love everything that everyone does, because certainly there are behaviors that need to change and will change. But if we can love the essence, if we can find a way to feel the beating heart and the common humanity of everyone, we will again be greatly rewarded. Now, just a few minutes ago, I received an email from a friend who did one of my recent meditations and said she saw that, and I'll read her words, resistance to extending kindness and acceptance to everyone is the biggest single block we all need to get beyond to create a planetary field of unconditional love. So loving everyone is not just something that we aspire to someday. We can make the deep decision and the leap of faith to try it now. And it's okay if we don't get it exactly right. It's a learning process. And we'll get better and better as we practice. And indeed, practice is key because we are to choose love over and over again. Keep choosing love. And if we waver, all right, we come back. We come back to the path of love. We keep, in a sense, spiraling into love with each decision to show up in a kind way, in an accepting way. And sometimes love also is tough love. If, in fact, there's a behavior that needs to change, it's important that we say so. And we see a lot of that in the various social movements that are happening right now. We do need to stand up for love and take a stand for love and what is right and just. So offering ourselves in love and offering what we do and what we love in service. And here, service is the key. So there's some kind of commitment, some kind of devotion to society, to life, to the divine, something that is big enough to hold it all. That's the key. When we say service is something bigger than ourselves, that something bigger needs to be able to hold the whole, the totality. So we love everyone, and we have the capacity through our expanding hearts to somehow hold all of it. And we're receiving. Like I said before, when we're giving, we are receiving at the same time. So let's now not just receive unconsciously and passively, let's be conscious as we receive the love of others. That completes the circuit. The point now is to be conscious about how we live. So the new pattern is about living in a conscious way, and that's actually much of the magic that makes the new pattern so extraordinary and so beautiful. So in this incredible energy that we're being gifted with and that we're co-creating, the final key I want to mention is celebrate often. Celebrate the big things, celebrate the small victories, the baby steps toward love and our unity in diversity. So those are the keys, and I'm sure we could tell the story in many other ways, but this transmission, this is the transmission that will then go to work and actually upgrade our individual and collective operating systems. And the principles are all very simple, and they're not really new. We've heard them before, but when we hold them together, it's like we have a key, and we turn the key in the lock of consciousness, and then doorways open, doorways of new possibilities, new lives, new livelihoods, And I've seen it work already in the few short months since July 5th when we entered the new pattern. So what happens as more and more of us practice together is we co-create the true world, which is a world that is based in clarity and knowing who we are. And in this true world, there is true economy, and there is justice, there is fairness, kindness, compassion. These qualities happen naturally, in part because it is so much easier, it is so much more economical to be kind and compassionate than it is to engage in conflict.
Tell me what you mean by true economy.
True economy. Well, that's another article that I have written. And basically, this was also earlier this year. I was I was collaborating with a friend and colleague in Australia who has started a business called Love To, which is very much pioneering new ways of creating businesses that are regenerative, that are not only individual businesses, but that work together in partnerships and create ecologies, ecosystems, new business ecosystems that are environmentally sustainable, socially just, and spiritually fulfilling, to borrow a phrase from the beloved Pachamama organization. So I have received, again in meditation, but also in conversation with this friend, 11 principles of true economy, and I won't say them all here because it gets somewhat technical, but they overlap with the keys, and one of them is, doing what you love. And so that's why this company is called Love To. It's based on the premise that when you do what you love, you do it with an energy that naturally works better and brings you joy and actually brings you health and well-being across the board. So the more of us who do that, the more we find ourselves valuing our own lives, valuing the lives of others, and then we become able to measure that value. And what we can measure, we can begin to build businesses around. And now, though, we're measuring health and well-being. And yes, it will be profitable. Yes, it will be beneficial for society and for the environment. So a true economy is, in other language, I would call it the enlightened economy. An economy of enlightened self-interest, which is an old phrase, but now I mean capital E, enlightened self-interest. This means many people, and maybe we're all where we are, so we're on the journey of enlightenment, but many people have made great progress in knowing who they are and then express this deep knowledge and wisdom in the day-to-day activities. So in a true economy, spirituality and, let's say, commerce and science and all the different domains of life are no longer separate. To be in business is to be spiritual when you do business in a spiritual way. And one of my favorite topics is spiritually awakened enterprise. So in a true economy, we have conscious businesses, but we have spiritually awakened businesses as well.
I mean, this reminds me of Charles Eisenstein's work. I interviewed him some years ago, probably about 10 years ago, I would say. And I loved his book. And it felt to me as though it was such a beautiful ideal, but not possible, just not possible from where we were at that point. But now you're saying that it is possible. Things have changed since then, and the way is open.
Yes. When Charles Eisenstein wrote Sacred Economics, I would say he was even more of a visionary to be making these kinds of points that many years ago, or earlier in the last decade. Not so many years ago, but so much has changed. How many lifetimes have we lived since 2012 or whenever it was? So I deeply bow to his vision, and certainly he's influenced many people, including myself. And yes, in the new pattern, these kinds of radical possibilities are not so radical anymore.
Yeah. I want to just touch on something that you said to me when we had a conversation a few weeks ago, not a few years ago.
Like I'm saying, many lifetimes.
Yeah, exactly. Because I know that many people have been saying the same thing to me that I said to you. And that is that so many people have been on a spiritual path for so many years, and they've reached a point where what happened this year has been so unexpected. It's kind of destabilised them, and they've found themselves slipping back into some old patterns, and I include myself amongst this. And then we get really upset with ourselves, thinking, well, we really haven't advanced as much as we thought we had. But you had a different take on that, and you talked about spiralling into love, and you said that the parts that are coming up now are areas that we probably never would have got to without this.
Correct. That is in fact what I'm seeing, that the most deeply buried wounds and traumas and frustrations of the soul are the ones that come up when we are so close to the finish line. And so I see it as confirming evidence that people who have done a tremendous amount of spiritual work are saying to me, gosh, I feel all of this rage from out of nowhere. I feel despair. I have, for the first time maybe in a long time, had suicidal ideation. And so now in those kinds of cases, it's important to seek professional help and to do the appropriate thing. So yes, to honoring what comes up, and yes, also to taking good care, because there is a lot of stress right now, and many millennials, something like a quarter of millennials in the U.S., according to one study, have had suicidal ideation, if I'm going to use that as an example of just how difficult it is. So I don't want to make it sound like, woohoo, this is fantastic, we're struggling. Well, it is still helpful to have things come up, because if they never come up, then the healing can never be complete. So what we can do individually and collectively is to be present for one another, to really listen and embrace our common humanity, release our historical grievances, and celebrate, as I said, celebrate often, celebrate each step of progress, each step of healing. So together we can do this. Individually, it's very difficult. And part of the reason it is challenging right now is that the social distancing makes it more difficult to come together in the ways that we're used to. So stay the course of healing, find help, find co-journeyers on the path, support one another. But what's coming up is really coming up as a healing and part of the healing.
You're listening to What Is Going On. I'm Sandie Sedgbeer, and my guest today is veteran entrepreneur, writer, mentor, and consciousness coach, Jeff Vander Clute. And we're discussing the positive messages and gifts of coronavirus and why the chaos of the world is strong evidence that we're moving forward rather than devolving. After the break, how we can embody the transformed world. We'll be back in a few moments.
The cutting edge of conscious radio, OMTimes Radio, IOM FM. Being a radio host on IOM FM allows you to build your show on a rich platform with the power of the internet to fulfill your outreach goals and connect with a very specialized and global online audience, unlimited by time and distance. OMTimes Radio will provide you with web relevance, a recognizable conscious brand, and with the standard of excellence that has accompanied every single OMTimes endeavor. Host your show with OMTimes Radio Network.
More than 24 million Americans have an autoimmune disorder, and that number continues to grow. I'm Sharon Saylor, and I'm one of those 24 million. To put that number in perspective, cancer affects about 9 million and heart disease up to 22 million. That's why I've brought together top experts and those thriving regardless of their diagnosis to bring you the latest, most up-to-date information. Join me, Sharon Saylor, Friday night, 7 p.m. Eastern, for the Autoimmune Hour on Life Interrupted Radio to find out how to live your life uninterrupted.
I am Fidel Nshambo. I was born in a city called the Bukavu in the Congo. We were a loving family, and then, boom, everything that I had disappeared in a single day. People think that when you are a refugee and they resettle you to America and all your problems are done. They don't understand that that's the beginning of everything. I was not born a refugee. I was made one.
It's time we welcome refugee families with open arms. Learn more at embracerefugees.org, brought to you by the Ad Council.
Welcome back. Jeff Vander Clute, you've written about embodying the transformed world. You've written about creating a benevolent world. And you've given us some ideas and guidelines for how we can begin to embody and practice some of this. But it's not as easy as that, is it? I mean, it takes a little bit of training. It's going to take time. You have a meditation that you've shared with some people about how they can actually choose love now. Would you share that with us?
Well, absolutely. So, where to begin? I do want to acknowledge that embodiment is a journey, and we make the decision to set off on this journey, and then we keep making the decision to stay with it. And as we discover more and more of ourselves and what is true for us, and as our belief system evolves, because it certainly will along the way, what we discover that there's more to embody. And the ultimate fruit, I would say, of embodiment is that there is a conscious integration of all that we are, from the deepest root all the way to the expressions in the world. And each embodiment is unique, and each embodiment is an embodiment of love. Now, when we embody the totality, which is what I'm really inviting us to do, is to see that when we're fully embodied, we are fully individuated as an individual expression of all that is, and divinity, not separate from divinity. So divinity is embodying through us, and it's a totally unique embodiment, and yet what we are, because of non-separation, is everything else. It includes everything. So we can appreciate 4 observations, and I would also encourage people to keep what resonates, and if something doesn't resonate, then just set it aside. But this is what I've been meditating on recently, that all aspects and possibilities of life, all of them, without exception, are expressed in some way in each of us. So whatever is possible in life is somewhere in, you could say, in our field, probably somewhere even in our physical bodies. But if it exists, we have it in us as well. And so we can find everything in us. There's a correspondence, there's a connection. Whatever's happening out in the world, no matter how remote it seems, there's the possibility of connecting with that very directly. And when we do, we can offer our love and our healing. And the internet makes it so much easier now to see what hitherto has been subtle or invisible. So really more and more we're able to discover quite empirically that everything that's out there we are deeply connected to. And then when we know how connected we are with everything in the world, then as we do our individual work, as we do our healing and transformation and trauma healing and working through all the old patterns and shifting into our new patterns, the correspondences and the connections that we're now conscious of, somehow those are like pathways, and the individual healing and benefit is then transmitted out into the collective. And the Buddhists talk about offering the merit of the practice for the benefit of all beings, which I feel is another way of saying this. So our individual work then is collective work. Our own healing and awakening is the healing and awakening of the world. And the Buddha said when he woke up, the whole universe woke up. So when you realize that you are the whole universe, you are life, and life is living you, then your awakening is the awakening of all. And so we can meditate and in other ways work with these insights so that we have direct access to healing on a vast scale. Again, when we know we are life, that means we're vast. Walt Whitman said, "I'm vast, I contain multitudes." He got it. And many, many people are getting it now. And so the sense of being a small self who can't affect big changes, that just dissolves, that melts away. And we know that we can. In fact, recreate the world in a way that is flourishing and environmentally well, and well in all ways. So the meditation essentially involves, I would say loving your life. Let's approach it this way. And it's still practice, but love your life in every detail, including the difficult stuff, but make a point of loving your life, because that transmits into the totality your love. And then that love circulates, like we were saying before. The receiving and the giving are one. So recognizing then that there's an infinite power of love within you, and this power is deeply creative, you are in the driver's seat. And this isn't egoic, because we're talking about a very deeply grounded and rooted you. This you is very much in the driver's seat of creation and has wisdom and knows what is going to serve the whole. So we in the driver's seat then, we make the decision that the world of unconsciousness and confusion is now to be created anew, to be the world of clarity and truth and healing and transformation. And I talk about this as the fully healed and transformed world. So invite this world, this fully healed and transformed world, to form, to come to you in your awareness without effort. Let it be spontaneous. Let this world appear and become richer, more textured, more vivid, more present. And now your connection with this healed and transformed world is very strong. And you can pass this knowing, this direct knowing, to those forces, those powers, and wise beings within you to make this new world manifest. And in the driver's seat, you can issue this instruction. You can decree that it is so. But also we know that it's a process. So we let all of the beings and all of the intelligence of life engage. And we say, let's make it so together. Importantly, whatever vision we may have had come to us spontaneously is a snapshot, is one version or one view of the fully healed and transformed world. So we release this vision now, we've passed it on, and we open ourselves to outcomes that may be even more beautiful than that vision, because there is infinite intelligence and wisdom involved. Now, we have invoked that, so the rest of us can take that vision even further. So we release our vision and open to the eventual outcome being more amazing than we could possibly conceive, and we pause. Now we pause for a few moments to allow these instructions to permeate the wholeness of our shared being. And we express gratitude for all that you are, all that we are, and the benevolent power within you and me, in all of us. And this power is infinite. It is good. This will be done. It is being done. So now we know, and we settle in our hearts in the knowing that this work has been achieved. And we allow the time it takes for the fully healed and transformed world to manifest. Having worked in this way, however, the manifestation will be faster than it ever would have been in the old pattern. And it wouldn't even have been possible in the old pattern. But in the new pattern, spiraling into love, it is not only possible, it is done.
I love that phrase, spiraling into love. It's a very powerful phrase. You have created, along with a couple of your colleagues, a course embodying the transformed world, your keys for healing and thriving now. And you say that it can help people transform at the speed of love and step decisively into the new possibilities for human life on Earth. How does that Tell us a little bit about that course. I mean, you've given us some ideas, and you've given us some meditation, and you've given us some thoughts. What else are you offering in that course that actually helps take people into an experience to transform at the speed of love?
Yes. Well, there are 3 of us who are offering this course together, and there are many practitioners of many healing modalities and teachers in their own right who are participating in the course. So we are collectively co-creating something here, and it will have the flavor of what I've shared already and so much more. So there will be quite a few body-based practices and contemplative practices that allow us to align the different parts of ourselves, to come into a coherence and come into a coherent alignment with life. And that's very important, so that we're not swimming upstream, so to speak. We're actually flowing with life. And then things get much easier. And as we come into our embodiment, which again is a process, and it won't be over at the end of a 6-week course or a 7-week course. It'll continue. But nevertheless, I've seen progress be very rapid. So during the course, we will be experiencing results. We will be discovering parts of ourselves, and we will be expanding our embodiment to include loved ones and our communities and nature and the whole planet and beyond, because I was speaking of totality a few moments ago. So expanding our sense of what embodiment means is really important, and we'll explore that more fully. And then, of course, community. So many people have said to me, I'm looking for a community of like-hearted, like-minded people who are on a similar journey. And the reason I emphasize that this is a group of very luminous beings coming together to co-create something is that this community will produce something that we couldn't predict based on the 3 of us who came together to create the course. And it reminds me of Thich Nhat Hanh's statement that the next Buddha may well be a collective or a sangha. And I would say that my secret dream for this course is that we become a collective that is awakened. And being community, therefore, is so essential to becoming a higher order form of awakened life on this planet. And in the process, however far we make it in 6 or 7 weeks, we will develop a much deeper understanding of what it means to heal and what it means to awaken now in this time. And hopefully soon it will be the post-pandemic time. How do we live going forward and embody all that we've learned in this new pattern? So there will also be leading edge insights into humanity's evolution and what I see as a very, very bright future ahead. And the tools of embodiment will help us to navigate the difficulties and challenges that are still with us and that will arise in the future as we continue to go through growing pains. But I predict that with greater mastery of embodiment, the growing pains will be much, much gentler. And so my hope is also that this course will help a great many people to choose the gentle path of evolution and really live a fulfilling, joyful life of contribution and spiritual advancement.
So when does the course start?
The course starts in late January, the 23rd or 24th, depending on your time zone. And we also have 2 sections of the course. We filled up the first section very quickly. There was a lot of interest. I'm not surprised that a lot of people like this vision for the future and want to live into it. So we decided that we would offer another section in order to be able to take more people on the journey and expand this co-creative community of luminous souls.
Wow. Well, Jeff, there's one thing that you said that intrigued me. You said that you feel that the benefits of this shift will start to become apparent in about 4 months. And in the meantime, we can notice where the patterns of separation are releasing within ourselves and in our interactions. Very quickly, before we have to close the show, is there any other piece of advice that you would offer in the meantime?
Yes. Well, It's a bold prediction to say that we'll begin to see in the mainstream media that this new pattern is becoming manifest in April, but I predict and I feel that we can actually see the signs now, but they're subtle. Where we can see the signs most easily is in ourselves if we look closely. And we don't have to look very far because it's in our immediate life situations that we will see evidence. If we look for it, we will see evidence. And when we appreciate the signs of change and then nurture the, if you will, the little green shoots of the new ways of being and relating to one another, then these green shoots will grow and become larger expressions of life very quickly. So what we can all do is we can pay attention. We can pay attention to our own lives. We can love our own lives, even the difficult parts, maybe even especially the difficult parts, because of the huge benefit that transmits out into all of life. And then we will see results. We'll see them at home, and we'll eventually see them in the news, and we can celebrate every step of the way.
Jeff Vander Clute, thank you for joining us. It's been a pleasure to speak with you today.
Thank you, Sandie. I've loved every minute.
Thank you. The Corona Transmissions, Alternatives for Engaging with COVID-19 from the Physical to the Metaphysical is available from Healing Arts Press, and you can find out more about Jeff Vander Clute, his transmissions, articles, courses, expeditions, inner journeys and events, including embodying the transformed world at jeffvanderclute.com and enlighteningjourneys.com. I'm Sandie Sedgbeer. I'll be back next week with another edition of What is Going On. Till then, it's goodbye from me.